Stay curious. This is Unremarkably Remarkable.
What if trees could talk? Not in a storybook sense with whispering leaves and wise old oaks, but what if right now, deep beneath the forest floor, a silent, sprawling conversation is taking place? A conversation of messages, shared resources, and urgent warnings, all passed along an invisible, living network. For decades, that idea was pure fantasy. But one scientist, working alone in the Canadian wilderness, suspected it was true. And she was determined to prove it. Her name was Suzanne Simard. In the 1980s, while working as a forester, she noticed something that didn't add up. In patches of forest, tiny seedlings growing in the deep shade of huge ancient trees were surprisingly healthy and robust. But in nearby clear-cut areas where seedlings had the same soil and all the sunlight they could want, they were struggling, even dying. The logic was backward. Sunlight and space should have been an advantage. Instead, it seemed to be a death sentence. It was as if something was missing, as if the seedlings left alone had been cut off from a lifeline. Simard realized that the trees that stayed together were helping each other through some unseen connection. So she designed an experiment to find it. An experiment that was both brilliant and a little radioactive. She chose a small patch of forest with a mix of birch and fir trees. She took a towering birch tree and, using a plastic bag and a syringe, she fed it a special meal. Carbon dioxide gas, infused with a radioactive carbon isotope. This radioactive carbon acted like a glowing tracer. The tree would absorb it through its leaves, and Simard could then track where it went. She waited. With a Geiger counter in hand, she scanned the forest floor, listening for the telltale clicks of radioactivity. And then she found it. The clicks weren't just coming from the birch tree she had injected. They were coming from the fir tree standing several feet away. The glowing carbon had moved. It had traveled from the leaves of the birch down through its trunk, into its roots, and then moved underground, across species, into the roots of the fir. The trees were sharing food. This wasn't a random leak. It was a deliberate, targeted transfer through a hidden system. They were connected. What Simard had uncovered was the mycorrhizal network, a vast, impossibly complex web of microscopic fungi.
These fungi wrap around tree roots, connecting them together in a massive, forest-wide grid. Think of it as nature's own internet. Through these fungal threads, trees don't just share carbon. They trade nitrogen, phosphorus, and water. And, crucially, they send information. A tree being devoured by insects can release chemical distress signals into the network, warning its neighbors. Those neighbors can then ramp up their own chemical defenses before the attack even reaches them. At the center of these networks are what Simard calls mother trees, the largest, oldest trees in the forest. They act as the central hubs, the great matriarchs, pumping resources to hundreds of smaller trees around them. They can even recognize their own kin, their seedlings, and will send them extra nutrients to give them a fighting chance. This discovery didn't just add a new chapter to the textbooks, it rewrote the entire story of the forest. What we once saw as a collection of solitary individuals competing for light and water is in fact a deeply collaborative and intelligent community, a cooperative bound together by a biological network that we are only just beginning to map. The next time you walk through the woods, just remember what's happening beneath your feet, a silent, ancient conversation, a world of trade and support, a network that has been connecting life for millions of years, holding the forest together.
So we learned that trees share food and messages through a vast fungal web, a hidden network that keeps the forest alive. But that was only the beginning. The deeper scientists dig into this underground world, the clearer it becomes. The soil beneath our feet is not dirt. It's alive, buzzing with invisible conversations that connect nearly every living thing on land. And it's not just trees and fungi. The forest floor is home to billions of bacteria, insects, and microfauna, all part of this constant exchange. Tiny microbes process fallen leaves into nutrients, fungi distribute them through their filaments, and trees use those resources to grow, which eventually fall, feeding the cycle. Every organism plays its role. Every death becomes data. When scientists map this soil microbiome, it looks startlingly similar to the connectome of the human brain. Different species fire signals, respond, and adapt, and together they create something larger than themselves. These networks also hold the forest's memory.
After a wildfire or drought, surviving roots and fungal webs hold on to carbon and moisture, allowing new trees to regrow faster. The land itself seems to recall how to heal. These webs act as a collective memory, recording stress, storing nutrients, and favoring the regrowth of the very species that once stood there. We often think of memory as a human thing, but in nature, it's everywhere. It's written not in neurons, but in networks. This isn't just local. Across the planet, forests are linked through vast patterns of soil and atmosphere. Their underground networks influence climate, water cycles, and the very air we breathe. As trees exchange carbon through these fungal webs, they regulate how much enters the atmosphere, effectively balancing the planet's breath. So, deforestation doesn't just remove trees, it severs communication lines. It breaks down a global system that stabilizes our climate. When we silence one forest, the echoes fade in others too. What if this hidden network reveals a pattern that repeats across all life, from the forest floor to our own minds? In these ecosystems, cooperation outlasts competition. Strength comes not from standing alone, but from being connected, from sharing what you have and trusting the system to give back. Perhaps the real intelligence of the forest isn't in any single tree, but in the space between them, in the quiet connections that keep everything alive. The forest doesn't shout its wisdom, it whispers it through roots, fungi, and the living soil. And if we listen closely, we can hear the Earth's oldest lesson. Nothing survives alone. Every forest, every life depends on connection. That was today's look at the remarkable hiding inside the ordinary. If curiosity made you smile, stick around for more little wonders every week. Like, subscribe, and let's keep exploring how even the unremarkable can surprise us.